And I don't know if we want to maybe go, it would be okay if we went around and introduced ourselves just for people who are here.
Mary sometimes films our meetings and people watch them later. So.
She is today.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm Roman Glawi, County Commissioner for the East End.
Ellen Donahue, County Attorney.
Debbie Jackson, Deputy County Attorney.
Steve Trollope, Undersheriff.
Perry Hawbaker, Community Counseling and Correctional Services.
Travis Heddick, CCCS.
Bob Olson, CCCS.
Lori Thibodeau, Probation and Parole Supervisor, Lake County, Lake and Sanders, actually.
Mike Thatcher, CCCS. That's abbreviation for Community Counseling and Correctional Services. We're a nonprofit based out of Butte. It runs a whole bunch of programs in Montana, North Dakota, Washington.
So we just completed a tour with these guys from CCCS, and so now they kind of know what we have to offer. So I guess, so you were pleasantly surprised? Is that what you?
I really was. I've probably been in 100 jails and being 25 years old. It's in pretty good condition. Unfortunately, some facilities, the graffiti or people scratching, and it's the boredom and monotony where they're gonna, which minor cosmetic paint would fix. I mean, it's in good shape. I was impressed. New technology, got state-of-the-art technology and intercoms and camera system. One question I had is, did you ever contemplate, I know you got the two non-contact visitation, dual video visitation at all?
Like the VisionNet, we don't have that yet, but we've been talking about what it might cost to get one because, number one, that's where everybody's kind of going these days, and Missoula County uses it a lot. And then especially with what we've been experiencing lately with the long distances, we might have to have that anyway if nothing works out.
This would be just within the facility for staff manpower, even that staff member for people in the distances, if you contract it out, what I'm saying, if I'm in jail, so I can do video visitation with companies that you can actually generate a small revenue off it, where if my spouse lives in Shelby, Montana, if they have the ability there, I can communicate instead of them traveling down here to visit. Not this isn't the court proceedings or anything like that, but the vision is, I'm 100% a VisionNet, but it is other potential sources of revenue for you, and or most jails and secure facilities are trying to get totally away from any contact or any, even in your secure areas, they just want to preclude people even coming to the facility, period.
I believe that our turnkey, those kiosks.
Does that have the capability?
I believe it does have the capability. So when an inmate pays for an actual phone call, I think it's cheaper to do that on the turnkey. And I believe you can do turnkey from a different city to his, right in his pod.
So you have the capability.
Yeah,
we wondered if that was
stuff
just
in the
canteen
hall.
or whatnot. So that's a nice feature.
That is a good feature.
For lots of reasons, even for primarily people that travel greater distances, and then, it just to open your visits so many days a week, but it's when you're depending on your manpower, if you got a jail feed and doing counts, you want to minimize as much as he or she has to do, is what I get at.
So before we did the tour, we started a little bit late, I apologize for that. But before we did the tour, we kind of all introduced ourselves, and we talked to Mr. Thatcher and his staff and our probation officer who came down from Lake County about what we're hoping to accomplish here and what kind of our needs are, which are, we want to get the jail reopened. In talking to Sheriff Boone and Under Sheriff Trollope before, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about we'd like, Mineral County would like 10, at least, 10 of our beds. I think that's what Sheriff Boone had said, 10 beds would hopefully deal with our own arrests. Get the jail back open, and then we were letting CCCS and know what our big issues are. We've got retention problems, we've got hiring problems, housing problems Mike brought up. Even if we got them here, it is difficult to find an affordable place to live in Sanders County. It's really surprising for how...
Mineral County.
I'm sorry, Mineral County. What did I say?
Sanders
County.
But it's
Oh my
also
gosh.
hard in Sanders.
I was going to say, yes, it's hard in Sanders too, but I was afraid I said Missoula. So it is, it's hard to find affordable housing here, like Roman was saying, especially if we've got Idaho Forest Group is up and running, and, you know, the wood industry is doing, I was just talking to a guy that works at the sawmill over in Deer Lodge, and he used to run 4 12s, and now they have them doing 5s, because when it's busy, they have to work. So if Idaho Forest is doing well, we know they're looking for housing, we have teachers looking for housing, it's tough. Deputies, we've had deputies who have been staying in the fire hall in Alberton because they can't find a place to reside. So one of the reasons I reached out to Mike was because of all the programs that CCCS has established and kept running, and your transportation. That was, in my head, was one of the potential options to open the pool for more potential employees from Sanders County, Missoula, who, with some kind of transportation, we could open the pool instead of such a small pool we have now. So just to kind of get people up to date on what we touched base on. So would you mind, I know you talked about it before, but could you just recap a little bit about how the transportation with your employees before and how you transport inmates? Because that's one of our big issues.
So, at the risk of losing people, there are the rest of the table, I'm just teasing, but for folks out there, so we operate programs in rural areas, and a large portion of our programs are in southwest Montana, and we compete with the prison, with Acadia, which is a children's psych unit Butte, with the Ware, so you get us all compete for the same workforce. And so what we implemented was a employee transport system where each employee paid $5 a week, and that was their transportation. And our programs in Warm Springs and Galen were anywhere from and near Anaconda 16, 22, roughly 30 plus miles. So we'd run a shuttle, and as we were dropping off the day shift, we worked the same shift, 6 to 2, 2 to 10, 10 to 6. We would then pick up people getting off shift. And so we ran that for several years as a perk. And it worked exceptionally well, because it's tough to recruit people to work, in my opinion, in corrections, in law enforcement, maybe not law enforcement as much, but it is in corrections. Working in jails and prisons and secure settings is an extremely challenging profession. You need to remember you're subjected to lots of verbal abuse and feces and urine thrown at you. And so John Q. Public oftentimes doesn't see that piece of it. The greatest analogy I can use is the Great Falls Tribune many years ago put a news reporter in the prison. And prior to putting him in there to address, I was a corrections officer, he had wrote a story how draconian and terrible these staff that worked in these places were to the offenders. And so they asked him if he would wear a corrections officer's uniform for a week and work in the units. And he found firsthand what his experience, and he wrote many articles that were very contrary to his original article and talked about what they put up with in the day of a line staff member. And I speak from that from little experience. I'm a corrections officer and counselor at the prison for a couple of years early in my career. So these professions it's tough to recruit people that want to work in this business, period. And then you factor in today what we're dealing with is lots of people can't pass a drug test, they can't pass a background test, and so you're very narrow in your selection process of who you want working in these facilities. The federal government implemented what's called PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act, and I don't know where the jail status are. All of our facilities have to get PREA certified. And I'll be very frank with you, it happens in every corrections facility in America. You get somebody that brings in contraband or crosses boundary lines. Just recently happened at the state prison, matter of fact, that nurses bringing in contraband and drugs and relationships. And so it's a challenging profession, and so you're already fighting a steep battle to find good quality staff. And so you really do have to factor in wages, benefits. What additional things can you do to keep people employed? And talk morale, and there's so many pieces. We do silly things that sound silly to people, but we have Christmas party functions and picnics, and as many, if we have employees that don't use a sick day in a year, we have a hosted dinner and give them a couple days off with pay and give them jackets. And just try to incentivize as many ways. And you got a little bit more flexibility in the nonprofit sector. The government, you got more restrictions. You just can't run around handing people gift certificates. So we understand that. Being again, a public employee as well, but I think you need to discover and try to identify a myriad of ways, or as many ways possible, to still damage the case. In our operation, because we are large, but we were small when we started, the career opportunities, upper mobility. In our case, we encourage a lot of people to go back to school, so we reimburse up to $3,000 a year to get them to go to school. And most of our addictions counselors, we have basically brought them in, and many of them were English teachers or coaches or other professions, and then we work to pay for their school net to go back and get certified as licensed addictions counselors. I'm just using that as an example. We got people in our business office that were high school graduates who are now accountants, for example. We supplemented their school. So we've been successful. I mentioned housing and offering some contingency housing, both short-term. Like our administrator in Glendale right now is living in our company house because he has a home in Lewistown and he transferred, and so he's looking to buy a house. But housing was, when the oil was booming, was real challenging in Glendale, both staff and housing. Lewistown, Montana is one of the nicest towns around too. In central Montana, real hard to recruit and retain staff in Lewistown, Montana. Because you're in the central part of the state, but you're really not close to any place. I mean, you're 100 and some miles to Great Falls, or you're 100 and some miles down to Bozeman, or 100 and some miles roughly to Billings. And so we've had a fairly reasonable time finding staff there, but we competed with the state hospital there. And more recently, they ran the prison infirmary, and they've just relocated that to Boulder. Yeah, they moved them out of the Boulder, but same thing. So you're competing against sometimes ourselves. We compete with law enforcement at the jail. Boulder's a classic example. My counterpart runs the med treatment for women there, and she has a heck of a time finding staff. And I did actually suggest to her, even from Helen Review, she should try to create some kind of a shuttle or something. You got to find another way to get people to make that drive. So. On the other coin, again, being repetitive, for the folks out here, we run our own state transportation system for offenders for the Montana Department of Corrections. So today, as I'm talking to you, we have 2 teams out that are transporting. They may be making run. One team may be in Yellowstone County, one may be headed towards Lake or Flathead today. And it's a pretty complex system. We oftentimes meet with some of our staff from Glendale. We may even meet our staff today in Billings. Or some of our staff in Lewistown may meet our transport staff in Great Falls today. We go to the prison, we go from Glendale. We don't normally, we do Missoula and whatnot. I don't think we come to Mineral County, but because we run a juvenile facility in Medical Lake, which is by Spokane, it's half the distance from Superior. Since 1999, we've been making exchanges. We used to haul juveniles from Butte and Bozeman before we opened Rio to Mark Hall, Washington. So we were crossing Idaho into Washington because I was telling somebody in the old jail, Gallatin, trying to reopen their old juvenile facility, and they closed it. And the issue they had was they thought they could hire 5 staff. And it was a 6-bed facility, had male and female. And they realized, we told them they had to probably have 10, because if you had a male and female in juveniles, you had to have a male and female staff. So they opened it for about 4 months. And I'm not comparing that to here, but what I was just talking about is this is before they built their new jail, but this was in their old jail, and it was not, this facility is far better, in my opinion, than what the old Gallatin County Jail was. There's a reason they built it. It was a disaster. Same with Butte and Anaconda. I mean, the jails were, your jail, your physical, in my opinion, and these guys are a lot smarter, and I am, is in pretty good shape. I really think it is, and I think you got more capabilities classification-wise than I realized. Coming over here, I was picturing them 2 pods and maybe not having the ability to do some of the things you can do with your technology. Like I said, is current. you know, there's some strengths and weaknesses in having your dispatch center. I think it's a strength, like we talked about the hallway, you know, in lieu of having 2 jail staff on, because if you did not have a dispatch center, I would never operate a facility with less than 2 people per shift, because if somebody has a medical condition or something happens, and so your dispatch supplements in more ways than I think probably folks understand. Run 1 jail staff member, you know, if something happened or whatever, you still got another set of eyes and ears. So that's good. And I didn't know you had that. I'm just telling you what my comments are, just wandering through there. Food contract, one of the gals had said, you know, you
She's
have a
here.
pretty good deal.
Michelle's here.
Oh, hey, Michelle, they were very complimentary, Michelle.
Awesome.
Said great prices and great food. And that, I'm serious. And I'm gonna tell you this because we provide food. We have a central food service that we put out 1,000 meals a day because we contract for the state treatment facility. They got 3 kitchens. They had 3 separate buildings to meet Medicaid reimbursement, but we do all their food, and so it's a busy place. I mean, it's our jail in Butte had used an outside vendor from outside of Montana. Initially, it was a disaster, and at one point they tried to use a nursing home. And it was expensive. It was cost prohibitive. It was $4 something a meal, and the food was not very good. So to look at it, and you don't know me, the managing offenders, food's a big issue. You folks have more recreation than some of these other jails. You mentioned that, even to have any ability to recreate is better than none.
Well, and just when you brought up the idea of on the front end, having a medical staff, an RN or a nurse practitioner or something, on the front end it looks pricey, but our medical care is unbelievable what it costs the facility.
Nice.
And a lot of the chest pains, we just recently, a gentleman who's in, we have to have him in Missoula because he's a sex offender, so it's $110, $120 a day. He was complaining about a broken wrist. Thank goodness our sheriff said, he said the same thing when he was here 5 months ago, 6 weeks ago, or 6 months ago, whatever it was. So he was able to let Missoula know, that's not a new, you know, that's not something, but it's amazing some of the bills we've had to pay.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, the county's on the hook if you don't have somebody do the triage that can maybe save you. I'm not speaking to the Mineral County Hospital, but any hospital emergency visit anywhere in the state or any state's not cheap. And so any of that you can prevent.
But when you were talking about finding niches, or because we know just in terms of all the people we're dealing with in corrections, it's mentally ill, chemically dependent, is 99% of what we're dealing with. So, and then some chronically ill. You know, a lot of hepatitis C or a lot of things that aren't terminal but are chronic.
Years of abuse.
Yeah, or just not taking care of themselves, dental issues, you know, lots of things like that where that could almost be something that would potentially make us a little bit more attractive for outside.
I'm coming into this kind of semi-blind, that's some of the questions is what are you offering, what are you required to offer, and it goes the same with any levels of substance abuse, mental health counseling, or if you did explore finding a specialized population, that's where it may affect your budget at one end, but it may benefit you in the other end.
And would that be something like from your, or even you, Mr. Thibodeau, that you think if we kept our 10 beds and we had another 16, 18 available, is that something that would kind of put us at the top of where you would house somebody, do you think? I mean, because I assume you as a
Well, ours
probation
would be
officer,
getting
a lot of
somebody a
chemical
chemical
dependency.
dependency evaluation, and if you have somebody locally that you contract with, great, but, or that contracts with POC, because we usually pay for that.
Yeah, and I can check. I think Nancy does have a DOC contract, but
Ellen, maybe you already asked this question, but do they do shared facilities other places? Or
that's a good question. Do shared facilities where, like the county has 10 beds and you guys contract out the other 15 or something? I know on the other end you've done it, but I don't know.
Like in Bozeman and Gallatin, I share with these guys, so we built it's 42 beds, we had to bring in modular pieces. So the greater percentage of the bid are state Department of Corrections offenders, and then the county buys.
So you separate it out, basically, you're contracting the full facility.
Correct.
And then that's because I was trying to figure out how you would do that
Yes,
otherwise.
that's exactly what you do.
Okay,
So
you contract the full facility and then that way you can have the separation.
If you're Mineral County, when you're identifying whether it's 6, 8, 10, 12 beds, when they were talking about earmarking a set number of beds for Mineral County, and so with adult offenders, you're not restricted. You want to try to classify them. You've got a little bit more ability to do that.
Sure.
But you're correct. The idea would be to try to sell whatever that number is, 10, 12 beds to the state, whether it's sanctioned beds. Lori, before you come in here, talk about Lake being impossible, put somebody in jail. And so when you sanction them for 30 days, want to get a chemical dependency evaluation and all these other things, and then they may go to a state facility. They may come to one of our facilities, start.
Right. No,
So-
that makes sense.
So it's another source of revenue. And so if you can find a special, the sanction population would be ideal, to be honest with
So
you.
just,
Short term.
yeah, so what if I get it right, so you contract, you just use this as an example, we use Mineral County Jail, you contracted that facility, then we'd come back, we'd get essentially payment for the rental on the facility, and then we'd pay per day based on keeping those beds. Or
That's one way you could skin it.
something like that,
You-
that makes sense.
Like in Washington, at a juvenile facility, so we just added Grant County, their juvenile facility literally had some ground subsiding, so their locking doors were popping open. They had some pretty violent youths in there. So they were more concerned about liability, somebody getting out and hurting the kid next to them, et cetera. So we contracted, and where we were attractive is included in their cost per day, they joined 9 counties, is the transportation's free. And it's a couple hours each way. So what we do with the 9 counties, and now the 10th, is they pay us a fixed rate. So if they're making money, this is their money. Are you with me? This is in this scenario.
Sure.
So if we get over 29.5 kids, and we haven't in a while, but we're getting close to it again now, they incentivize us by giving us like $100 a day per kid, because they're getting maybe 150 from another county. Are you with
Sure.
me?
No, I get it,
So-
and that's
so-
what makes total sense.
So you could prepare it in either way you want it, but if Mineral County's just doing this themselves, period, they would be very prudent, in my opinion, to be engaged with the Department of Corrections with the same type of conversation and trying to, whether it's sanctioned beds for Lake County or for that matter, for Missoula or any other county. It's overfull. What the problem going on in the criminal justice system is because systems are overwhelmed or overtaxed, behaviors, you're trying to gauge who needs to be in jail more than the next person.
And that would be my next. So years ago, part of that process was brought up to use a different facility up our assisted living type thing. And my understanding is twofold. One, you create a community board or something like that that has a screening process. So that you don't get, so you get, I mean, Mike, I've known your processes and things like that, and I know the work and so on, but one of the things when I had brought this up before was, well, we don't want to bring sex offenders or violent offenders and that type of thing. And in my research, what I found out is when you go into an area with a treatment facility is that there was a community board where there was a screening process.
Correct.
And that essentially, whether it, say, Roman sat on it and the sheriff, and then there are a couple people locally, that's
Correct.
the way so that the community was involved and knew who would be there, that type of thing.
Yeah, all of our community programs, they're called pre-release or
Right,
transition. Yeah, there's a screening committee that screens the cases that come in, and you're right, it's probation, parole, law enforcement. The secure facilities we run, there's no screening.
Right.
Because frankly, if law enforcement brings a sex offender in today in a jail or secure setting, you can't screen them. You're protecting your public safety.
That's different.
But for the assisted living kind of concepts, yeah, we built Lewistown, the meth treatment facility. It's beautiful.
I've
It's
been
in the
there.
book. It's a very attractive. You drive by, and let me point this out. So Lewistown, Montana, we built the facility next to the Little League baseball fields. Lewistown, Montana didn't want a methamphetamine treatment facility. I'm just being blunt.
Yeah.
Lewistown wanted 50 jobs They wanted the infrastructure, so we did the water and the sewer to build the facility, and they wanted the $10 million in construction. So we had public hearings, and it pleasantly surprised me, there wasn't much of a concern about putting it there, and I thought there would be next to baseball fields. But that facility has a screen committee, that's the one thing they insisted on. But-
Right.
So it's a soft environment, it's not a detention facility.
Right, no, exactly.
So in anything you were trying to open, whether it's lake or what we tried to do a flathead, absolutely, you want that mechanism in place. What I'm saying here is, today in Butte, Montana, or Lake County, I'm on supervision, I've relapsed, I'm using, my parole officer doesn't have the ability to put me in jail,
Hold on.
and so I continue to spiral out of control. So once they
And
do find a
felony.
space, where I'm saying this would possibly be attractive is to put he or she in here for up to, Lori has the ability to do that for 30 days. You do all your assessments, and then you try to identify where you're gonna place that person.
And it's one of my facilities, he comes and gets these fine people and takes them to treatment.
Yes.
Right, and they
well,
got the
that's-
transportation piece
It
too.
is.
yeah.
That transportation is
Today, as I'm
beautiful.
talking to you, we're probably picking up people from Flathead or Lake or somewhere to maybe put at Start, or we may be taking people from Start to go to Lewistown. They may be going to Passages or
Right, no.
Billings pre-release. So that's the whole transportation system, we created for ourselves in Washington first. And then we started in Montana piecemeal just for ourselves. Well, there was a for-profit operator who ran it, and some of you may remember years ago, by Helena, a couple guys cut through a roof and got out and escaped. It was a bad deal, so they canceled their contracts. So we've been doing it, now for the state, I don't even know how many years. And plus, it was a pretty cost prohibitive contract the state was paying. We cut it in about half. It was a competitive bid, but to give you an example, it's not in this book, we have our own vehicle maintenance center. So we have mechanics on site, and so all of our vehicles we got about a fleet of close to 100 vehicles within the company. And so all of our vans and cage sedans and that, they're state of the art. They're all secure. Our staff are obviously training restraints, et cetera. So it's a busy little operation, I'm just telling you that. So Lake County's hoping that somebody's coming up there today, I would bet, to pick up somebody, to get somebody out of their jail. So the stop may be Montana State Prison, it may be Start, they may be going to the Butte Pre-Release Center, they may be going
Sure.
to Bozeman. So that's why we run two teams. Sometimes, if it's real busy, we'll put it there.
The transportation, and so, and I'm sorry, I just thought it started at 2, and so.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that was,
If this has already been talked about.
no, that
so,
was my mistake, I apologize. We kind of
And
introduced.
I mean, I know you've been in this a long time, and so, I'm like, ideas wise.
I'm only 32 though.
Yeah, me too. But so, like, if when you're looking here, your first thing is we're looking at parole or probation holds or that type of thing as a option?
As an
one-
option,
one
that would be
option?
the commissioners and your folks'
Sure.
decision, but I would throw.
Is that something, I guess, are you guys interested in?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then,
Yes.
okay. Then my second thing is, like, if there was, look, you don't know Superior, I've just lived here forever, and like everyone pretty much in this room, but Superior is not doing well economically on it. If you had a wish list of saying right now, because I mean, I deal criminal defense constantly and that part of it. If there's a wish list of saying, God, right now, because I look at Lake County, Sanders County, and the Bitterroot, Missoula are being my 4 prime areas that I work in it. But it doesn't seem like there's really anything over here on the west side. And it seems like, I mean, I've been to the Nexus program, I've seen Connections, the Watch program, maybe my favorite of all of them.
Mine too. I should say
But
that.
it said of it, I said it seems like, you know, we ebb and flow. We're in meth one day, we're in opiates the next, and it cycles, and it's going to continue to do that through the next 100 of years on it. And so my thought is this. I mean, one, I know you've seen the jail, but you haven't seen the assisted living building, which I think it's a dorm style type of a facility, or ground available around here as well. I mean, if there was a dream facility, because you know, we talk about not having the employees necessarily, but one thing the Bakken told us, if anything else, is if there is a decent job, people will move here. I commute in from Superior every day to Missoula to work in my law office, and it's not an issue. I mean, it would be if I was being paid the $11 an hour,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. But if you have the jobs, and we also have the feeder system, the university, that's also putting out social work, people looking for it, that type of a career. So, I mean, to me, there's, with the jail, like you described, treatment facility, I know it's a nonprofit, and I just got done researching the DOJ grant money right now that we can get
Entry money.
on that. I mean, they couldn't even give it away this year, the state. And so, I mean, like I told the commissioners, I mean, if we could come up with a plan, there's people in this room that can institute it and help with it to get it, but, you know, you're the guru on this.
No, thanks for your kind words, but let me, first of all,
And just briefly, there was also talk about the assisted living facility as potential housing. Somebody had brought it up
Well, I think it's
before. I
more
mean,
of
just throwing it out
it's a
because we know.
treatment facility. It's, you know, I've been the one in Butte. I mean, it's way better. It's got kitchen. I mean, it's set up.
they're all better
And
than
it's
one
currently
that's
just-
100 years old.
Right,
No,
but
this is
yeah,
a
but
new
our,
facility. It's just sitting vacant.
Yeah, it is.
And that could help feed the hospital as well for, you know, medical care. I mean, it's just,
Got some synergy.
it does to hear, but I'm just like, if, you know, a field trip, I'm like, I said I wanted to meet you in person, but it's like, there's other ground here that can be had at, I mean, comparative prices to where you're paying pennies on the dollar. But we have, to me, Lake County, Sanders County, Bitterroot, and Missoula, a perfect area. To me, I mean, the watch program is really specified in my mind to DUI offenders. But we don't really have is, you know, connection corrections is what I always call them, it's kind of, maybe 1 in 5 might get it, type of thing.
Shorter term program.
Yeah, but that GAP program, and maybe more so geared to the opiate type stuff on it, but to me, you know, it ebbs and flows. I know, like with the watch programs right now, when they changed the statute, it changed and that part, and you know, it'll ebb and flow with the legislature as well. But right now, where grant dollars are available with like DOJ, is there a way? You know, we're asking all of this here an hour and build something. But what I'm saying is, what is it you're looking for? Because I'm driving to work, and when I come back, I'm thinking, you know, I'm talking to Lori, and like times like, well, where can we get them into, and what type of treatment and that type of thing. And that's where I really saw the jail is. I was trying to figure out conceptually how you would contractually work, but when you're having someone, if there is, you know, a good facility to work at like that, I don't think the staffing and the housing, all that's moving this way. And it's, you know, unfortunately we're trapped by Missoula in one sense, because that prices of those houses, the contractors just can't build out here, but that ends, and it comes this way. And, you know, for a while, people are going to be willing to drive. Once they have it, you know, it's like IFG is that they're going to be around more than a day. They're going to be here where you can build a family and the risk down, then that stuff comes with it.
I know, but, yeah, and I know you're concerned like for your clients and stuff, but I thought this was more of a meeting just for you coming in to open up our jail.
Right.
Can we get to the bottom line here? Like, if you were to come in and open up our jail and be CCCS here, what is your long-term plan here? Is it a 5-year contract? Is it a 10-year contract? Are you here for the rest of our jail life?
And this is like a brand new kind of an idea where I just reached out and said, we're trying to figure out a way. And initially how I reached out to Mike was, in my thinking was, we need to open up the pool of potential employees. So if we had somebody who had the transportation resources, and that made me think of CCCS, then we could advertise to Missoula, Sanders, whomever, and have that piece where people can be transported here. And then Roman was talking about after you do your initial year, I know with the union issues, you're up to 13 something an hour after you pass probation and after the first year. 13, I'm sorry? 1381. So, I mean, that might make it more attractive if people could afford to come from other areas. You know, if they're paying $5 a week or $5 a month or something, or if we pick that up to get people, then we don't have to just advertise to, I mean, we're advertising in other places, but people aren't gonna drive from Missoula for $12 an hour. I mean, maybe, but I think it's gonna be tough. So that's initially kind of where I was thinking, and then also the idea of having an organization that's been doing corrections for so long where, kind of like what you were saying, Lance, we keep 10, 12 beds or whatever, and then we contract out to CCCS, and they fill them with Lake County, or you fill them with whomever, but we have you guys as kind of our core to help us stay open.
Not only go open, just to, I mean, they're gonna run it. I mean, that's the thing.
Right, and survive, you know.
And I do have a question about that.
Yeah.
If that were to
As a
happen.
potential.
If we lease, as a potential, I have other ideas too, but as a potential, if you were to lease the jail and we were to retain 10 beds, we would have to pay for those 10 beds to CCCS, whether we use them or not.
Yeah, you're gonna try to
I wanna clarify
factor
that.
generally when we bid a facility, anything, we use different occupancy levels. It's like you say, well, we gotta have at least 95% in here to break even or whatnot. So you got to go back in further than that. You're still looking, if you're averaging 10, one of the questions we have is, what's the census for 5 years? What is?
Well, no, it doesn't matter what the number is. I was just
But
curious.
there would be some cost.
Okay.
But here's what we did in Bozeman. So we built the facility, we gave it back to Bozeman, it's now their property after we paid it off. But we fixed their rate at $63 an hour in 2005. They're still paying 63, not an hour, a day, excuse me, $63 a day.
I'm going to the house.
The day rate for the Montana Department of Corrections is in the low 70s. It's went
I
up
saw that.
when the legislature gives provider increases. So I'm going to try to answer all these questions. When our initial trip down here today was to look at the detention, see if there's any synergies, whether we were being contemplated as an operator. You got a whole bunch of semantics and dynamics you got to work out in that end of it. But is it possible? Of course it is. Like I said, we do 10 counties, and Washington's probably the classic template that kind of subscribes to how you do it, the mechanisms and whatnot. But jumping so as a piece of your jail, if I'm running your jail, I want to generate other revenues so that you can control your costs. If you stay at the 10, 12-bed jail for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, your costs are going to be pretty high. I mean, because you still got staff, you got fixed costs, you got variable costs, they're not going to change. By bringing in that other revenue, where we're talking probationers or sanction cases, whatnot, you're going to mitigate that. You're going to lower the costs. You want to try to keep the costs where it's at for the taxpayer and or reduce it. So that's your benefit. There's no people running around knocking down doors to want to run corrections facilities. They're either a for-profit and they're large companies that are, they're trying to buy up little nonprofits like us all the time. It's a publicly run or it's a nonprofit. And before you folks come in there, I argue and advocate nonprofit because we don't send money out to the shareholders in Tennessee. It's Montana taxpayers keeping Montana dollars in Montana. So any revenues, every year we got to give the state an annual audit, and it would be the counties, whoever we do business with. So if there is, and we've had years where we've lost money, if there's any excess revenue, it has to go back into your programs, your plants, or your personnel. So that's my attraction. We've been approached probably 20 times in 20 years by large for-profit companies to buy us out because we're small fish in a big ocean. We really are. And they'll offer you these real sweet deals like, Thatcher, you pick out 4 or 5 key people, we'll give you a bunch of money, and the rest of the employees, well, we don't know what we'll do with them. So we are not for sale today, nor are we ever going to be. So my bosses are 10-member, non-paid, non-compensated board of directors. And it sounds crazy to you, 5 of the 10 have been with me. I'm starting my 36th year. So I've been there since the inception of the nonprofit. When we opened, did we ever plan to grow in corrections? Absolutely not. We got asked to come to Washington and North Dakota, and as we grew, there was a need by the state of Montana, the meth treatment, the DUI laws. We worked to get the DUI laws changed back in 2001. But so to answer, I'm bouncing around on you. So going back to the assisted living, I'm just jumping on that for a minute. When we went into Glendive, they had abandoned the Eastmont facility. It was a facility for development to disabled clients. So it sat empty. And everybody said, you'll never find people that want to work at this place in Glendive, it's, the railroad's there, but this oil fluctuates, so we've had the ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys. So when we opened that in 2005, there was really a piece of, Governor March was the governor. She had promised people in Glendive, we'll do something with your buildings. That's how we ended up in Glendive. They did an RP. Warm Springs, the doctor's office building sat empty for 2 years. Beautiful building, sat empty. So we approached Governor Roscoe at the time and said, a fourth-time DUI, you can get up to 10 years in prison. This is crazy. And not that we don't support consequences. We said, put people in long-term treatment. It's $10,000 a year versus $40,000 a year. And so when the law changed, that's how it changed. You could get 13 months in jail and prison, 6 months in treatment. And I'm a long-term treatment guy. You got 4 or 5 DUIs, but there's teeth, there's flesh, there's public safety. You belong in the program. And we've had tremendous success. You're correct. And the data has been studied by University of Texas, voila. But where I'm headed with that is that is a great service that we offer, but it's a cost-efficient service. The taxpayer of Montana say buku bucks. We still hold people accountable. We have people who've been sober 16, 17, 18 years. Look at law enforcement. John Sullivan used to be the chief of law enforcement. He grabbed me one day and he said, Jimmy R., is that a Colt? What kind of Kool-Aid did you give him? He'd been through 11 treatments at the VA in Sheridan, and he'd buy a case of beer for the ride home. And I asked him one day, he said, I just started thinking correctly, and they throw me out, because you got to change your thinking before you ever change your behavior. He died sober 13 years after he went through watch. It's a great story. And law enforcement said to me, we like him. And we hated him and his brothers, because they were fighting law enforcement every night. They said, well, he's sober. It's a big difference. But to go back to these programs, so we're in Warm Springs, rural location. We got 65 staff, and we're fully staffed. Start where Travis and Bobby are. It's kind of in between Anaconda and kind of rural location. Lewiston, when we went up there, we could have bid anywhere in Montana to open a treatment facility. Then people, they really wanted it. Their sheriff Kilham was the sheriff. God bless him, he passed away at the time. Their leadership, their commissioner, city manager, they wanted it. But what I'm trying to point out to you is, they weren't trying to address addiction. They were wanting to create jobs. I'm just being blunt. And so there was an economic development piece of this stuff too. There is. An assisted living facility is what Nexus looks like. If you ask me if I could wish for a nice facility, I wish I had your assisted living facility in Butte. I'd fill it today and shut down the buildings I'm in because they're 100 years old. So I don't know what other infrastructure until now that you have here, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Somebody had said that. I think your primary decision that needs to be forthcoming is what are you going to do with your detention facility? But I would seriously give some, because we would be interested, but you folks as well, some consideration of looking at both ends of the spectrum, because the state is closing down. I shared Lori, the prison treatment facility at Deer Lodge closes July 1st. So they have 60 beds. It used to be the boot camp. I closed the boot camp, made a treatment facility, put $1 million fence up, and now they're closing that. So there, in my opinion, there's going to be even a bigger need for more treatment capacity.
Why are they closing that down?
Depends who you talk to. When I'm an old prison counselor. I had never seen a prison population over 1,450 in my career. A couple months ago, it was 1,683. So they're dangerously a couple hundred people over.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they're going to walk from the facility. I think they're going to use it probably, I'd speculate, for medium custody or different custody level. They're having trouble finding treatment staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of what the driver was. It was a legislative decision. I had nothing to do with their decision. The point I'm trying to make is all the treatment programs we run right now are at or over capacity. And they had declined with the DUI law changes. They did. I mean, we saw a big decline. And so I'm speculating, and don't think for a minute somebody in Billings, my counterpart, isn't sitting there thinking, somebody's going to have to open another type of treatment facility. I can't speak for the Department of Corrections, but I think you're spot on in saying, is there going to be a need for one? Absolutely.
I do have a question about that. Can you combine populations? Because our prime concern, Ellen and I have talked, and all of us have talked, is keeping our jail open for our community to have beds here.
Yes.
So our prisoners are not transported elsewhere. And that's for the courts, that's for law enforcement, that's for everybody, the residents. So can you combine your 18 beds of treatment and then our 10 beds with whoever comes in off the street?
My initial blush through this facility is you did get creative, but could you do that? Possibly.
Because I think that's a part of
Only
concern.
possibly, what I'm saying is possibly. So if I'm booking a guy into your jail tonight who, it's a low-level offense, I guess what I hear your question saying, can you legally stick him in with Jack the Ripper who just killed 3 people?
Or our druggies
She's
off the
talking about running
freeway.
a treatment
Yeah, like
program
having the
with
treatment
Oh,
center with the
You
gym.
wouldn't want to do that.
No. So
Yeah.
what we were
That
talking
would be
about,
like what
not
Lance
a
said.
treatment facility here, we're talking about a sanction, so that gets
Okay,
put
okay,
in
that's what
there.
my question was, because you
And we
keep talking
provide some
about treatment
services.
centers.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I jumped into his assisted living building that I've never seen, saying, on a long-term picture, if I lived here, I think you would be farsighted to
Build upon
to
the
look at this.
jail with these other ideas.
Right, but that would be the
Yes.
detention
Your
center,
detention
so,
facility's your primary.
yeah, would be our
And this is
detainees,
detention.
and then whoever else we could bring in from the
DOC,
feds, DOC.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm sorry, ma'am, I probably confused the.
Yeah, no, I
No,
just
no,
focused
no.
on the jail, and I don't even know what, I think the assisted living center is used somewhat by the hospital, I don't know what all for, I think there's at least one office in there.
I think traveling nurses are staying there right now.
Yeah.
Well, what I can tell you that Lake County does right now, anybody who's sentenced in court to a DOC commit ends up going to either Sanders or someplace else as fast as we can get them there. So DOC pays once they're sentenced to DOC. They go to Sanders, we pay Sanders, or Lake, it doesn't matter. So we've got people coming out of court, we've got inmates, those would be your inmates that are heading to a program. Usually we get MSP out of there pretty fast, but Montana Women's Prison, we don't get them out of there very fast. You know, and then, of course, all the folks that now we have the ability to do these sanctions on.
Right,
There's
your
a
short-term
big,
sentences.
the other
for
thing is
long-term.
when Missoula's crowded, when Flathead has been, there's been times when they've
And
been very
Sanders.
crowded.
Sanders was closed for a little while.
Sanders, well, they're not now, though.
Yeah,
We
they
keep
were,
them- we
when
keep
they had
them
that
really
flu
busy.
thing, and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
talk-
actually,
oh,
they've been
were.
full for us.
Not, they've been full for me too.
Yeah.
You need to remember, most people want to get out of jail and go to the prison system because they have more visitation, they have contact visitation, they have vocation, they got recreation in large yards. So the old saying is a year in jail is like 3 years in prison. Well, it's the truth. If you think, and I'm not being critical, that's any jail in America. You get far more benefits of being in the state prison system because you go to school, you got lots more programming. So oftentimes, folks don't want to be. So the target, if I was doing this, the target population I would advocate is that short-term 30-day sanction, do a CD eval, or maybe a mental health eval, whatever's needed. They're not preclude you in that rec area or something to run in an hour-long
Okay, well,
clock group or
that was
something like
my
that.
question, I
Yeah,
was just curious
You
about
don't want people
population.
sitting around, idle time is the devil's advocate, so, but in the same breath, programming takes resources, and so you're not gonna come in and do, where I was getting into more of a longer-term treatment concept was following up your question, gentleman behind you saying, that's something you should parallel to this discussion, maybe start exploring, because I think there's gonna be a need for, you know, if Superior or Mineral County really has an interest in that, you wanna jump on it, because, I'll give you an example. 4 years from start to finish for us to start meeting with the folks in Lewistown, to borrowing $10 million, to building from the day the first, we went in 2007. But we started having those discussions in 2003. And then the state, 2005, come out with, the legislature approved the funding and come out with an RFP. And that's how we opened in Lewistown. Glendive was a little bit quicker because there was a need. Watch was full, they wanted to expand, and that's how we ended up in Watch East. And they wanted Yellowstone County and all females to go somewhere else. The original Watch program was co-ed. Co-ed, co-located facilities, they're challenging. I'll just be very safe and say they're very challenging to run. They are. So I'm kind of biased. I think if you have the ability to have separate programming, you know, I think it makes sense to have for all males in Lewistown and all females in Boulder. So I think there's more of a niche, going back to your treatment facility concept, for adult male offenders in the sense that the prison's going to end their treatment here in 6 weeks or 5 weeks. So parallel fashion, I just throw that, but Port Ellis gonna not ever invite me back down here again.
And he didn't bring the donuts.
Swahili
He didn't bring
conversation.
Town Talk
It
donuts.
makes sense what you're asking me. Both of them, going back to this jail, you gotta find, so I'm just gonna use 10. So you got, is it 26 beds in room?
26 plus the 2 holes.
So if you're going 10 or 12, whatever that number is for Superior, yes, you want to isolate those. But you want to go out and try to aggressively find somebody to buy those 14 empty beds. Because at the end of the day, whether you're running this yourself or you're hiring somebody to run it, you're going to benefit significantly. Really, you know, when we opened a 40-bed facility in Bozeman, I told them Bozeman should have a 100-bed pre-release. We have employers beat on our door every day looking for labor in Bozeman. It's crazy. But they were afraid, you know, we're right by the old jail at the time, now the new jail, that we're not gonna allow this to ruin Bozeman. I go to a function in Bozeman, and I know lots of people down there, because believe it or not, I set education back 100 years. I graduated from there, your Grizz fans. He's a Grizz basketball player, they throw me out here. But they wanted a small facility. Their cost would be so much cheaper if it was 80 to 100 beds. I mean, incredibly cheaper. And they could have had a nice facility, but they wanted modular stuff. The life cycle of these corrections facilities, your facility's in good shape for 25 years. I went in the Dawson County Jail, and it was a year old, and it was falling apart, and it was poorly run, and there was crap all over, and it looked like it'd been there for 30 years. And the undersheriff at the time was as big as him, and I was scared to death to ask him, who's running this place? The offenders, or you are? And his name was Wally, I can't remember his last name, Creek guy, but I said to him, why is this so dirty? I mean, it's filthy. And he said, well, aren't they supposed to be? They had never ran a big, you know, they picked up 140 state inmates. So you go from Bayberry RFD, where you got an 8-10 bed jail, and all of a sudden you got 150 adult offenders from the state prison system, and you got nobody's ever worked in this business, you got problems. And now they've since changed administrators and been in there again. It's clean, it's well run, and there are little things you can go in the facility, and especially when they're operational. The facility these two gentlemen run, been there brand new since 2010. You can come, I invite you over, come see it. It's spotless, and it's telltale that it's a well. That sounds crazy to some of you, but it means it's a very well run and operated, and they're busy. They average 20 intakes, releases a day. I mean, you're talking about a busy facility, because the average stay there, well, it used to be 55 days, but it fluctuates. We get some people longer term, but so if I walked out of here today and Mineral County says, we're gonna do this, my advice is I would be trying to set up a meeting with probably the director and or deputy director, Director Michael or Deputy Director Wolken, if I was saying, thanks for coming here, but we're gonna do this ourselves, that's where I'd start. I would parallel fashion. I'd be up sitting down with Lake County, both from Lori's clientele, adult supervision, and the sheriff say, what do we gotta do to get your population?
Yeah, we've reached out to the sheriff.
So I see our role as maybe being on this detention. Would we have an interest to operate? Absolutely. Same thing.
So
We need a lot of questions answered. If we were doing it, where's the food coming from? What are you paying? What's the utilities? Who's responsible? Maintenance. Are we responsible? You're responsible. So you can't just come into a meeting and arbitrarily say, when do we start?
But if both parties were mutually satisfied with the answers, and Mr. Thatcher gave us all books, so I'd like to pass these around, anybody, or give them out, anybody can look at this. This is good stuff, and the questions he had. If we kind of agreed to do something, what could CCCS do to help us open the jail quicker in terms of, like I was talking about, in terms of helping us advertise to a bigger pool? Could we be able to say, we can offer transportation for employees?
But Ellen, if they're running it, isn't it their employees?
It would be your employees, but in terms of just, how
Find them.
Yeah, how would we, if we came to an agreement?
Initially, I think one of the conversations you sent me, you had maybe 4 or 5 people. We would want to look here first. And the reason I asked about wage and benefits, and I want to compare what we offer, let me go back to, when we opened Bismarck, I can't find somebody in Bismarck at the same wage I can in Butte, Montana, just being blunt. So the similar jobs in a different agency, we pay $3 more an hour out there. I'll give you one quick example. Martin Hall, I pay less than Spokane County. A county juvenile detention officer is very well paid in Spokane. So Amazon's coming into Spokane in August. So the commissioners there and I met, we're gonna up wages a couple of dollars an hour. We have no choice, or I'd never find staff to staff Martin Hall. So every location has its pros and cons, trust me. Glendive and Bozeman, I have to pay a far higher wage. She mentioned McDonald's, that's not an exaggeration. McDonald's in Bozeman's 15, 16 bucks an hour. Even
It's
though you
close to
got
that in Missoula.
14, 15,000 students, and that's our feeder. We use the college in Butte, at Montana Tech, and there extensively. We use retired police officers, retired firemen. A lot of folks, we used to be able to put people on insurance at 20 hours. We used to increase it to 30. So you get a 52-year-old police officer, 55, and he needs health insurance. So I don't know if you have that ability here, or if that's even, but in places where we went, we think retired folks, and in our case where we got a college students are ideal, and then you flex their schedules. I mean, every site's got its own little idiosyncrasies, I guess, for lack of a better term. But to go back to your question, even if you guys have a meeting, you say, you know, it was nice and knuckleheads from down here, but we think we'll still help you. I mean, I'm going to be meeting with the deputy director this week, and with your blessing, I'd like to say, hey, we met with Mineral County, you know, they want to reopen the detention facility. What's your level of interest, whether you're doing it yourselves or not? Likewise, so I'm different than getting on using social media and say, this is what we do. I think the intimate eyeball-to-eyeball visits with Lake County and these other places are far more important than sending a letter like most of us, and I caution to not even write a letter to you today, because I hate, you know, I want to see, I want to know what you're proposing. You know, I think you have, between the state and possibly those couple counties, the ability maybe to pick up those 14 or whatever the number of beds is quicker than you think. I really do.
And even,
If
you know,
you hire
even if
transport from Lake, and we have people,
Right.
like I sent guys to Sanders County twice last week.
Yeah.
It's another 15 minutes further here, but I'm doing that, and I can't afford to be paying POs to be transporting offenders.
Right.
If you have detention officers that you pay an extra
already,
hour,
and that are trained, and yeah.
you're paying them an extra hour on their travel, but they're getting paid to travel now.
Well, we
because
know
they're hauling people.
that, and we've had offers or comments from Missoula DOC. If you open again, we've got more than enough people to fill your
I
beds.
would think so.
And then Lake County has a problem. I went to the jail commanders meeting last month, and the head of probation and parole, I can't think of it, Olson, I think, Kevin, said that he has people he can't put in jail because he has no place to put them.
So that's what, yeah, that's what, yeah.
So,
Statewide issue.
Yeah,
I mean-
the legislature changed the legislation this year. We've been unable to
Right.
even
2 years
accommodate what
ago,
we're supposed to
yes.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we have this new ability to sanction people and get them to programming, and we've been unable to use it because of the lack of jail space.
Could you tell us how many people, right now we've got like 26 beds.
Correct.
In there, you know, it was the first time I'd seen it, but there's 2 beds to a bunk, right? There's plenty enough room to add an additional bed. Is there a regulation against that? Number one, and that probably wouldn't be that expensive to add. We'd add another 7 beds.
It's a great question. So to give you an example, Watch. So we had the prison come in and we put additional beds in about, they had the psych beds that's a plastic molding.
Right.
Some in the center we took out, and so we put double bunks in. We did some of the same stuff at Martin Hall, where we had a single bed. We welded actually a hard style bed. So can you do that? Of course you can.
Of course.
The only thing I caution you is, I liked about, one of the features you have is you still got some nice ability to separate. If you get one person acting out of 26 people, you can lock him down and separate him from that population until you make a determination. Now, here's the beauty you got
We
with
have
the
2
state
lock
contract.
beds.
You can then do it, this gal here or hearings officer comes in, does a hearing, and you may be able to move them. I know we've got people moved out of the jail to a more secure, to a prison or whatnot. The DOC is pretty cooperative if they know you got a problem who's screwing up your jail operations. I'll give you an example. These guys occasionally get somebody who's mentally ill, so we got the mental health pod, but it's a short-term acute, not even acute, psych units, so we got mental health professionals, we got mental health technicians and staff. We try to stabilize a guy in his medications to return him to that community placement. If we cannot, if their treatment requires more, we have the ability to get them over to Warm Springs and or the prison. Because we're not equipped to have the severe mentally ill people for long periods of time. I mean, it's a great, so you would be able to, going back to, if you attracted sanctioned beds, or you still would have some flexibility, I believe, I'm speaking for the state, I'm out of line a little bit, but to move people out if they were in pain.
And even looking at the rec area, that rec area is huge. There's 2 rec areas.
Yep.
Why can't you bring that down and add some bunks to it?
I looked at the undersheriff, and I was curious, because I didn't ask you what you use in both rooms for, because I didn't know if that was a treatment, multi-purpose, and sheriff's rec. So if I was a businessman, you gotta be careful how you staff these. So all of a sudden you put 8 bunk beds in there.
Yes.
So I know where you're going with the question.
Right.
I would not advocate that initially. I would try to get to 24, 26 on a consistent basis.
And then
see where
think
you're
about
going.
adding it.
Bigger is always better in that
It's gonna
sense.
be right in here.
The AFL-CIO, they say you have to have an indoor rack and you
Yep.
have to have an
Outdoor
outdoor rack.
rack.
So we've got those screen there, allows sunlight in.
I worked on that in a cemetery one time, so.
Screen when it was winter time,
Yeah.
well,
But-
dual function.
But there's.
You could cut that rec down though.
What's that?
I'm thinking.
Yeah,
They
but
use inmate
And
workers for
utilize it,
like
but I'm
laundry
just saying, for the future, you could add
Our
more beds.
detention staff does.
Make it
Does the laundry.
possible so we don't.
They do the laundry and
Square footage wasn't.
and
small,
serve
since I've been
food, yeah.
Yes, Sanders has trustee system.
Yeah, and then that's just.
Yes, they
something you might
do.
want to explore, if you
they didn't
can.
want to give us back one of our defendants because they liked him so much up there.
Well, the days of having Otis in the Mayberry jail are probably
Yes,
over. for
yeah, other than,
everybody.
other than
But
Phil's good.
occasionally, if you get a trustee, and sometimes you get a high-profile person in your jail, where, I know
need to, yeah.
Tubo, they use a couple trustees to do laundry, and some of those, just.
They did use trustees here, and something happened,
Yeah.
and the undersheriff, or the sheriff now, the undersheriff at the time said, we're not doing this
Not doing
anymore.
anymore.
But we haven't been,
Experience.
I've been here a little over 2 years, and I think probably the highest we've been is maybe shortly after I came, maybe 17, 18. I don't think we've hit capacity since I've been here. So-
When I asked for like which costs our budget, here's what we would go back and do. We would try to build a scale to show, here's what your budget, whether you're doing it yourself, would look like at 12, in increments, 16, 18, 20. So you can then get a sense of saying, geez, here's what people don't understand about running these places. You have them same fixed expenses today if you got one person in there, whether you had
Or the whole thing.
26. The 26, the under 25 are variable. It's additional food costs, it's additional utility costs from running your showers, et cetera, and maybe more liability relative to medical and whatnot. So what we would propose is look at that, do an analogy, and then send you back and say, here's what the state may be paying for beds, and you can then get a better picture with the multiple performers saying, boy, if we could contract with the state or whomever, if we stayed around 18 or 20, this is what it looks like. And then you as a county would say, if we sub this out to Thatcher and CCS, if it's a fixed rate, anything after, that revenue's coming back into the general fund for Mineral County, whether it's building improvements, that's the unknowns in this stuff. Like, some of the attractions we have is obviously all of our own HR, payroll, the administrative functions. And I was asking the medical, because we have practitioners, and then we also, I would contemplate if you didn't have nursing down there, for example, we would run a nurse down here probably twice a month or something. So those are the little things that there's some pieces of synergies, that I think we could possibly bring to the table that will be of value. The transportation, for an example, twice a week at a minimum, we're running up this way. So I'm just looking at, like, if you have established Tuesdays and Thursdays we're running, and whether you're doing it yourself or not, that's where if you say you didn't want us anywhere in this picture, but you said, can you transport offenders for us somehow, because we're going to contract with Lake County? We'd look at that. That's what I'm saying. I come over here today just trying to get a general consensus of what you're trying to accomplish, so that there's, then I get excited more than he realizes back there. When I hear there's an assist, I gotta be honest with you, that's what we do. And I don't apologize to anybody in this room. I sound like I'm arrogant, but we're good at what we do. We've been doing it for a long time, and I got some great staff, and so, especially in the treatment world. You know, I would argue with anybody in the country that Watch and Nexus and these programs are as progressive and far-sighted. It's unheard of people get 6-9 months treatment. So most of us in this room, if we were struggling with addiction, we'd go to Rimrock or somewhere for 30 days and pay a lot of money.
If that.
And all the researchers tell you that long-term treatment is
It's the way to
what's
go.
effective.
And we just went up from 60-day programs
To
for the
90.
short term to 90 day.
Which is-
So DOC now is best
Recognizing that,
practices is
yeah.
90 days, and Mike's changed all his to be that 90 days.
So I'm all over the map on this, but honestly, I looked at some of the questions we asked. We have we got 12 maintenance staff, for example, so I didn't know who maintains the jail now. Does the county do that? Would they still want to do it? Would we be maintaining it ourselves? You know, again, I told you I was favorably impressed with the state-of-the-art technology that replaced the old junk. We used to have a facility with the old junk too. That's how they were built back then, the old buttons and key control and whatnot. So there's features in there now that, regardless of who, whether you do it, you have somebody do it. But there's a lot of unanswered questions that we would have to take a look at. I think if there was an interest in our presentation date, that we would probably come back to the table and show you multiple scenarios. But at a minimum, unless you folks, I'm looking at the commissioners or you or the undersheriff, I don't have any problem in a private discussion this week in Helena on their Thursday. Let the deputy director know that, hey, I met with Mineral County. I don't know if they're going to do this themselves. They got some capacity. You really need to either have a conversation with them or us or all of us, because I think that's your next step. I think that's the primary partner I would identify.
And I actually reached out to them a few weeks ago too, and then I was saying, they sent me an email back, couldn't find the email. I was like, I know it was a guy that said, responded back to me, and then I did send out another email on Friday evening, so.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that when we had 14 empty beds, 6 years ago, they would have bought them the same day I offered them, to be honest with you. When administrations changed, come in with a different flavor. Lewis and Clark was trying to build a large jail that was going to sell a couple hundred beds to the Department of Corrections. I don't know if you remember following this. The jail issue failed 3 times, so then they passed a levy that's on a smaller scale, and they bought another building to remodel for their administrative staff, but they couldn't float the bond. So even the larger county, those jurisdictions, these regional concepts in Missoula and Great Falls and Lindbergh, they were born out of those counties trying to find a way to pay for the construction of their jails and create some jobs and have a beautiful, efficient, state-of-the-art facility. You're thinking the same thought, and I'm thinking on a much smaller scale is what I'm trying to tell you. There's nothing precludes you from having something with 14 or 16 beds, and Lori was the one that hit on the sanction piece of it. Mm-hmm. That's an offender you want. That's somebody who's probably relapsed. You got to get a CD eval, and you're trying to get them into a Nexus or a Watch or a Connections.
And if they don't behave, I do a hearing and we send them off.
Yes, and when Lori and I first talked, because it was a deputy who used to work up there who put us in contact, when we first talked, she said, I can get somebody in there tomorrow. And I said, but I don't have any staff. We don't have any staff. But she could have gotten people in there. So it comes back.
Could you provide staff? Could you provide staff temporarily?
We
until-
provide staff to get this thing up and
Yeah,
running.
that's kind of what I was asking, but I made it sound like it was us.
Bob and Travis said they moved down for a month and
I've got space.
stay in the local motel. No, honestly, we would probably look at that as that's why I asked about what housing was available. Because when I told you, when we bought them in Lewistown, Glendale, that was the sole purpose of it. It was the one we have in Lewistown's by a golf course, and beautiful, 6 bedrooms. And so, I'm gonna sound crazy, if I was doing business with you, I would still explore that route. Because that kid graduate from U of M, if you can attract him down here, and I only told the story why 90% of the new police department workforce is that's exactly where they want to start. And in my biased opinion, I think people that work in law enforcement, they should spend time working in a detention facility. I really do. I think it gives a guy in the street a way, and large, Maricopa, all the big jurisdictions, that's where you cut your teeth, is working in a jail. Or
In Orange County, California, they never let anybody go on patrol unless they worked in the jail. You worked for a year, at least.
Well, it gives a new officer the ability to meet the offenders ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they go out on the street and they already know who they're going to be dealing with.
Absolutely. So to answer your question, yes, but the goal would still be parallel or at the same time to do some recruiting in the greater area around here and attempt to get qualified staff. Because I'm going to tell you, if you had 12 applicants today, this is just my biased opinion, if you found 4 or 5 in that dozen, you've done exceptionally well. When we opened Rio in 2002, we had 1,000 applications for 50 jobs. I still got the article. If I opened Rio today, a secure detention paid top wage, I'd be lucky to get 100 applications versus in 2002, 2001, we had 1,000 applications. And that's my greatest, these guys have asked, would we ever reopen that? I don't think I could find Galen. You guys all know where Galen is? It's in the middle of nowhere between Deer Lodge and Butte. It's on the State Hospital campus. But at one point, we had 78 full-time employees there. And that's full-time psychologists, a school psychologists, all our own teachers, principal. So you can find them, and sometimes it is wage. You know, the benefit package is important too, you know, from our end of it. We think that's real important. So we offer, it's a 401k, it's a $1 match. It's not a PRS or a TRS, but it's a 6%, which are nonprofits exceptionally good. So the 100% dental plan, those other pieces are pretty important. Health insurance and 3 weeks vacation and et cetera. The strength I think we would have is like Bob or Travis or some of these guys, I'm serious as far as training, and then knowing if we were scrambling to find employees, I'd pull them from other facilities and put them out here for periods of time. That's a luxury. It'd be somebody who's already trained that would benefit you. Because what you can't afford to do, I'm just being blunt, you can't reopen and get a contract with the state or whomever and then shut her down again in 6 months. I hope I don't offend anybody.
And that's what happened to us.
And that's where we're at now, Mike. Our initial start, we're having trouble finding people that are qualified, applications. You know, we have health insurance and they pay into the sheriff's retirement. So we do have some benefits. What we need right now for immediacy, for expediting this whole thing is, you know, we'd be interested, I think, in having, when you're talking to the state next week or whenever, is getting it running for us, and maybe at some time in the future, maybe you could hand the baton back off after the county had some people that wanted to live here and stay here and they were trained, but we can't, it's the dog chasing its own tail. We can't get them hired and we can't get them trained in a timely enough fashion where we can handle the inmates safely and not have people get hurt or in trouble with not knowing what they're doing. So, you know, I mean, we'd like to have this. I don't know where all these contracts were before. I used to bug Ronnie Phillips all the time. Hey, have you been calling? How come we only have 16 people in here? We need more. I'm glad to hear that there is. You read the paper all the time, the jails are full. So how come we weren't getting any before? But if you have the wherewithal, I mean, someone called you the guru. We need a guru right now to help get this thing up and running, because right now, well, that's where we're having trouble. Is now Ronnie's decided to retire after 25 years. He was trying to get people hired, and we had 5 applications and only 2 qualified applicants, and we just couldn't get anything up and going to bring our inmates back.
You know what? Ronnie's smarter than all of us. Whoever Ronnie is, they're fishing in the river. They say,
You better believe it. Yeah, dummy. Yeah, 25 years, she was smart.
You know, if you were to contract, and this, I don't think I'm out of line legally, but a couple of things. If you did, and we were able to move this timely, what I would advocate to you, I don't want to do this for 6 months. I would do a shorter term contract, 2 years, 3 years, and at that time, you would then have the ability to say, and I don't have a contract with the government, period, that doesn't give them the right to get out of it 30 days, honestly.
Well, and I say to people too, I said, you can always break a contract. When I said, there might be a penalty, but you can always break a contract.
The federal government can unilaterally write you a letter and say, we're not doing business.
Right.
They can't. Well, we're right on the interstate. Our thoroughfare is perfect. Like you said, we could get the inmates and then give time to build on the assisted living or any other ideas, because I think you're right, that treatment is going to be in the future here.
Oh, it is.
And we are so close to the
Re-entry, oh my God.
we should be able to help accommodate all of their needs with our short, 35, 40-minute drive from Missoula on the interstate.
Well, you know, and I know people, I was born and raised in prison. I know we throw rocks at each other over there, but I'm going to tell you, the governor of Bullock, when they said, this is economic development, and it is. There's no getting around it. When we opened START, We had a public hearing, 100 people showed up and nobody spoke in opposition. They wanted 65 jobs, they wanted a no 10 or 12 million.
And community members have brought that up about,
This isn't a
employees
bad
here,
idea, even that's
shop here.
assisted living. What's so bad about getting 8 or 10 or 12 families moving into Superior that are good people? And
Right.
their school room goes up. I mean, it's not a, people got this misperception that, Godzilla and his or her crew are moving into town and gonna ruin our town. That's not true. It isn't.
And
And I
Diane had a
think you
question
have-
back
I
there.
do have a comment. Three of us, Denise and Judy Stang and I met together this morning to talk about an idea. And we would like to submit that as a possible proposal to, before you make a final decision.
Sure. Well, there's only one of me here now, so don't worry about a decision being made.
Okay.
Go ahead, give us your.
Well, do you want me to give you the,
We can do it on Friday, though.
we'll do it on
Again,
Friday.
I mean, no offense, but I mean, Mike, I'd like you to bring, this is me personally, and if you don't want to bring it up, I'll call the people that do it over at the state. I can call that. But to get this word out, I mean, it's no offense, but this thing has just been dragged on too long, and I was excited. I mean, I took a day off to come down here to be here to listen to you, because I know what you're bringing to the table on it and that part, and I know, Lori, I've worked with her for 20 years now on it the same way, and so, I mean, I know how the connection works within the state and that portion of it, so anything you can do into the exploring or whatever, I mean, I would hope you would do that.
Oh, I'll do it
And you said you'll do it Thursday,
Yeah,
and if, I'll talk to Mike
Just so
afterwards,
you
I
know that I did it.
can be available by
What's he
phone,
doing?
I've reached out to them, so anything I can do too.
And
Found
then
it-
we'll submit our proposal on Friday.
Okay,
Is that okay?
you betcha.
Deputy Director Wolken, for those you didn't know, was a senator out of Missoula. So she's probably pretty familiar. I'm speculating what's going on, and that she gave up her Senate seat to take the Deputy Director of Corrections. And just be very public. I found her, so to this point, very exceptional to work with. I think she's really trying to, her background, she has a law degree, very bright, and that's who I would have at least a cursory discussion with, just to let her know I've been down here. And again, whether you threw me out with the bathwater, that's your, there's no hard feelings. I'm coming fishing down here this summer regardless, so I'm on a friendly terms with you. I'm just
Have your license. Where's our fishing game guy?
Yeah,
where's the warrant?
Yeah, he just left.
So at what point are we gonna have like a better idea of financials of all this? I mean, from the county side of things and then your side of things, I mean,
Yeah.
at some point, we're gonna have to discuss like what it's gonna,
Absolutely.
cost us, what it's gonna cost you guys.
Spot on.
Right, and Mike actually, Boone had asked if Mike would list out some questions he had. So Mike provided that, say with the holiday and stuff. So we just got this today, and I've been looking over the questions, and I think a lot of them we can answer pretty quickly. But some of them come to the operating budget, how much, what do we charge per day, and I think so to crunch the numbers kind of idea. So I'm hoping we can get this to you. I'd like to get this to you before you meet with the with DOC Thursday, so it'll be,
Concur to that, the guy in the middle is the CFO, he's the bean kind.
Yes,
he's a smart
and
guy.
Perry and I sat on a board together, so it's nice to see him again too.
So you're right on. The list of the questions are what's
Yeah,
the
and you
operating
can-
budget.
you wanna look
Trying
at
to create pro formas that would show scenarios where it would be hopefully beneficial. You're spot on.
I mean, we're trying to help you guys out with all this too. I mean, you guys are at somewhere where, you can always use the extra beds. And then we're kind of at a point now where, we're losing money on this whole deal. Nobody being in the jail, I mean, the jail's there, it's not being utilized. And then, I mean, we have to be there for each other, which is, I'm kind of interested in the financial side of things, where the money that, if we're saving money, if we're breaking even, if it's still costing us money, and then the same thing for you guys.
Yeah,
I'm assuming
it's
with
a
you
mutual
guys.
interest, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've, I mean, I think it was very, it was a lofty goal to potentially break even. I mean, I think we as a community also understand that oftentimes detention costs the county money, but it's a cost that we're willing to incur for the safety of the community. Because, that's Deputy Allard, he's one of our sheriff's deputies in the back. And, I mean, they know,
I'm a member of the community.
but a member of the community today. But the reason I brought that up is because he knows that out in the community that people are aware that with the jail closed, there's concerns about book and release, of course, not the violent people who we can't release. But he kind of knows.
Well, you've got a twofold
The
issue.
community kind of.
Public safety and what are you paying Missoula or somewhere else?
Right.
Well, right, we've kind of been transporting right now too. So
And then that
it's
means,
costing the
like,
county
They're all, yeah, it's all
money for
deputies now.
overtime for us to transport. I mean, we don't have the money in our budget for vehicles, so we have high mileage vehicles that aren't very reliable, and now
You
we
just
have to
got the new ones.
transport.
What?
You
got the new
know,
ones, right?
that
Yeah,
much further,
they're
not
used,
being
but they're
miles
new
on our
to
bill.
us.
So,
Oh, it's a
Yeah,
great
they're a little
point.
better.
I kind of want to know what's in it for us,
That's what's, it's gonna
What's in it
take
for us is
a
getting the
lot of
jail
work,
open.
but it's gonna take some time. We gotta get
Right,
information.
absolutely,
This
yeah.
was really just, we're just grateful to come down and have a conversation with you.
Right.
I'm
Yeah,
just so
And I think all of us are
glad.
grateful that you guys are here, so.
I'm a little hesitant to put this out as an economic development, and we're gonna build housing. We're 97% public lands, or 93%
Oh, yeah.
public lands. And everybody wants that to grow, but there's not a whole lot of places for that to grow. So I get a little concerned when we're talking about that. I put my house up just as a question whenever we have a rental, and I just said, I think we're gonna sell it. I had 125 people respond to me in like a day's period, because there was absolutely nowhere for anybody to live. So I want to be just a little bit careful that we're throwing that around, because this county does talk and they say the same thing, so just.
Well, where I was going from is in Glendive and Moosetown, we bought a house where our employees live.
Right.
So I wouldn't look at multiple family dwellings or nothing, but what I said, is if you ever did something with the assisted living, if you open a treatment facility, you're correct, you may have families that will move in.
Right.
And that's where the local politics and whatnot, some communities don't want growth and others are begging for it. So
I think we want growth, we're just limited
Yeah.
at the amount of growth that we
And I didn't
much
know,
land?
coming down
Yeah,
here, if there was an
exactly.
old
Kinda like
motel
this,
or
right.
something,
Right.
I never paid any
Yeah.
attention
Some of
to
us
it.
want
Right,
growth.
it's
some
usually just
don't.
50,000 that people
Yeah.
see.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't come into a community and put a treatment center in or pre-release or whatever without a lot of community hearings and stuff, right?
Like he was
Well, I
saying,
know, like,
4
how
years
else
to,
that'll never happen,
yeah, 4
right?
years up in
And
Lewistown,
I
he
know
talked
that
about
Sue
all
Wilkins
this. Yeah.
fought that forever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
and right
takes-
now, let's focus on the jail. I mean,
Yes.
I think it's great, the idea, I love some of the ideas brought up, but we've got to get the jail.
Your detention facility is the
I
priority.
Correct. I guess for me too, the other worrying piece is if, we have to have 2 people on shift during certain, whoever's being housed there, all of the statutes that we have to follow. And we're not going to have 4 or 5 people, so even transportation from Missoula to here isn't going to be economically feasible if we only have 2 or 3 people, maybe 4 total, but they're working separate shifts. So that's going to be, that's like they bus, the owners, the Pause Up bus all of their employees back and forth. But for here, I can't see how that would be economically feasible to anybody.
No, in the short term, what you'd have to, what I'm trying to extrapolate is that a short term. The long-term goal would be
Right.
to have your workforce
Right.
right here,
Right.
close enough where they're driving
Right.
themselves.
Right,
But we're looking for
How can we open the
a
jail
solution to a
quicker?
long-term problem.
and if we open the.
And that's what I'm saying, we've had to do that before, we don't do it no anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And we're gonna have dispatch openings, we might be able to pull from Missoula for that. I know we have deputies that live in, I know they transport in their own cars, but we might have, a couple people, but yeah, short term, what can we offer or do to get it open? And then hopefully they would move to this community,
Well, that's why I was looking at housing, because if I
Yes.
had, let's say, 4 existing employees that were willing to relocate, could I find them where they shared a house, they're single employees, free housing for them as a condition, that's the stuff I'm
I
trying to.
worked with the Quins recently, and we have employee housing, and it is maxed out, because we can't even bring people in from other places anymore. There's nowhere to house people, and this seems to be a recurring issue with anything we do.
Yeah.
Visiting nurses, the hospital,
Yeah, I
doctors,
appreciate
it's
you
just
bringing that up,
crazy.
I didn't know
Yeah.
the lay
And
of the land.
teachers, you told me
honestly.
that.
Teachers, yeah.
I had 2,
Yeah.
we had 3 teachers already look at our house, and you can see how hard it is to keep people. And so growing economically here is so much different than even in Glendive or other places,
Right.
and that's what I think, all of us are probably 95% the same. Each of us is 5% different, and that's our reality, I think, when we look at it. So it makes it hard to get people to come and stay, we tend to be jumping off points, right? So somebody out of college, or somebody who's the editor of the newspaper, or wants to go to the hospital, they come here for a year or two to make their resumes look good, and they leave.
Sure.
And, yeah, I mean, it's just the beast of the burden of the beast.
Well, you got a nice spot there.
We do, I agree, and I think it does take targeted recruitment, right? So you want to find people who like the outdoors. You want to find people who are willing to, do those things, and it just makes it a little harder to get quality people, which is why I think the county's struggling as it is. Ronnie was here for 25 years. We all hoped she'd be here for another 35, but that's not the reality. And
Well, and again, it's a universal issue that fewer and fewer people are wanting to choose this profession. I'm just telling you that. I've been at it almost 40 years, and 10 years ago, we had we'd post a job that would open, we'd have 100 applications. I'll give you a good example. They just brought in telemarketing, and it's not your light bulb kind of concept. It's Google and Amazon and those kind of things. And they were hoping to hire 350 people, and they've got 65 applications.
it's also a function of our economy right now, too.
And it is, and the wage, so the wage, I think they were initially talking $12-13, and they've already increased it.
Right.
And trust me, in Bozeman and Bismarck, North Dakota, I got all kinds of competition to compete with. Every time I get some good folks, the prison ups their wages because it's in Bismarck too and steals them away, or attempts to steal them away.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's more of a common issue, and I'm not so sure it's not all professions. I mean,
It is all
the changing demographics are affecting us. Those of us that thought we were going to retire probably aren't going to, or at least maybe hope somebody would hire us back at 65, 66. I'm counting on it anyway.
Yeah, I think I am too. But yeah, those are kind of just some of the concerns that pop into my mind after being here for many years now, knowing Roman and everybody else very well, and the things that people will start to talk about. And they don't seem important, but sometimes the devil's in those little details and how you roll it out.
Definitely. The housing, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate just
All right, so from here, we're back on the agenda are we back on the agenda this Friday?
Friday at 10 a.m.
Okay, good, because we're trying to keep it on the agenda so we don't lose track of it. And then could you give me a call or email me, and if I could even sit in on your telephone call, or if there's anything I can do when you call it the DOC guy?
So I'm meeting, we're a member of the Montana Community Correctional Association, so we're meeting in Helena.
Oh, what are your meetings?
It's
Okay.
in Helena, and so we got the Board of Pardons coming to
Oh,
the
okay.
corrections. What I'm gonna attempt to do is, when we're concluded, is see if I can meet
Okay.
Deputy Director Wolken.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize it was like a formal meeting.
Oh,
Oh, sure, that
they're
would be
coming
great.
in, so they come into our meetings, so we'll have agendas that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not bringing it up in front of all the other nonprofits.
Yeah.
I was just trying to.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Steal her time and say, hey, been over here, this is what these folks are looking at, so that, then it may be important, I'll contact you and then say, Ellen Dawn, who's gonna be probably reaching.
And I think I know, or as you were talking, I said, I think she might be an attorney. When you said, I think I might know her.
She has a law background.
Yeah, I don't know how, but maybe in a social, back when I was at Safe Space maybe, or, I don't know. I feel like I know her.
I just found her, I think she's a bright spot in the Department of Corrections.
Yeah, we'd appreciate that. And then we'll bring this up and we'll get some more ideas on Friday.
Well, thanks all you for letting us down.
Thank you so much.
And we left some money in the town, Durango's.
Yes, we went to Durango's for lunch, so thank you so much.
Yeah.